On today's Czar's Top Shelf, you're going to hear the greatest lead synth sound in all of electronic music, brought to you by none other than Autechre during the glory days of 1995. Yes, today we'll be listening to the track Clipper from Autechre's double album Tri Repetae. So kind of like I did with the Man-O-War video in this series, I don't know, 10 episodes back or something, I have to kind of clear the air with Autechre because I'm not an Autechre fan. I was, but I'm not. I would go as far as to say I dislike Autechre now. I don't like at all what they've become. And I'm not someone, just to tell you right off the bat, I'm not someone that's just like into nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia. I really prefer futurism in music, in electronic music more than any other type of music. My favorite artists are those that established something and then built upon it and expanded on it and refined it. There's a quality to experimental music that's attractive. The experiments can be attractive. But for me, they're only really like meaningfully attractive if the artist learns something from those experiments. That's the whole purpose of experimenting, is to try something and then evaluate the results and then learn to do something with those results, something productive. So with Autechre, right around the turn of the century, right after the new millennia, they conned all of their fans into thinking that they were producing this very intentional, very complicated programmed music that was like miles beyond everything they did in the 90s, when in fact, it wasn't composed at all. It wasn't intentional at all. It was just a series of random algorithms spit out by a computer. And algorithms that I don't even think they had much intervention with from a human perspective. Most of what we heard from that era, and really for the rest of their career, was non-human glitch work, is all I could say. The album Cornfield really kicked this off, and I think they maybe even titled it Cornfield because with that album they conned an entire field of their fans into thinking that they were doing something highly intellectual when it was the exact opposite of that. Gantz Graph that came out after that, just carried that torch further. And pretty much for the next 2 decades after Gantz Graph, it's just been nonsense, glitchy nonsense from Autechre. So I'm not a fan of theirs, but I was a massive fan in the 1990s. The big four of electronic music in the 1990s was Aphex Twin, Autechre. I'm going to kind of put them in order. I'm going to put them in order in the 90s. Aphex Twin, Autechre, Square Pusher, and Musique. I can't do the four here. Four. Mike Paradinas, Musique. Those are the 4 greatest electronic musicians of the 90s. Of those 4, the only one that I think has really excelled into the 2000s is Square Pusher. I'd go as far as to say that the last 2 or 3 albums from Square Pusher, probably going back to Damagin Furies, I don't know how to pronounce that, Damagin Furies. From that album onward, those 3 albums, even his latest one from earlier this year, I think it's better music than what he did in the 90s. He's a great example of someone that has experimented. He's tried, like the avant-garde free jazz stuff, the live bass playing, incorporating noise and nonsense into his music in a creative way, learning from those experiments, and then bringing that all together here in like the last 10 years to create albums that are truly unique and truly better, in my opinion anyways, than what he did in the 90s. A lot of people may prefer his 90s stuff. I like his most recent stuff. I think he's just gotten better. Autechre's gotten worse. That's the point of all this. So anyways, 1995, Autechre gave us this glorious album, Tri Repetae. It's a double album. Look at it. There's nothing on the cover, nothing on the spine, nothing on the back. It's just this sort of, I don't even know what you call this. It looks like a sour avocado, khaki sort of color. I love the fact that there's nothing on this. They had a habit of doing this sort of thing. No titles, nothing. I mean, it's just empty. And then you got some stuff inside, but I mean, really, it's a when you're browsing through the bins at a record store, this is all you see. It's like deliberately difficult to market an album that looks like this. And although I am very critical of Autechre currently, they've sort of carried this theme through the 2000s, and I respect them for that. I like the fact that they're difficult. I've been so inspired by Autechre over the years. I published a book in 2023 called XLZABK001, a deliberately unwieldy book title. And if anyone who reads fiction knows, you don't title a book like that. I mean, people that read fiction are like really awful, awful humans. I hate to say it. I write this stuff, but I have very little respect for a lot of people that read fiction because they just have very little imagination, unfortunately. Oh boy, now I'm griping again. This is not the no, I don't know. Maybe I'll edit that out. Maybe I'll keep it. Bottom line is this. I was inspired by Autechre to market the things that I write, and even to an extent the electronic music I produced in the past, but especially the things that I write, I'm inspired by them to make it deliberately difficult. Because when you make something deliberately difficult to find and to absorb into your brain, when someone does that, they take the time and the energy to do that, you as an artist know they're really committed to what you're doing. Like that's a special amount of effort required to internalize the art that you create. So as an artist, that means more. So if you only have, I don't know, I mean, this probably sold really well because it was Autechre and they were popular. But if they were not so popular, let's just say this album only sold 500 copies or something like that. As an artist, Autechre would know those 500 audience members are devoted audience members, and that means more than 50,000 to any artist with sense. That would mean more to them. Anyways, boy, this is like a very negative video. I don't mean to be so negative. I got to turn this around a little bit. Okay, Tri Repetae. The song we're going to listen to from Tri Repetae is called Clipper. It is my favorite song from the album and my favorite Autechre song, period. And it's my favorite because it's a really gorgeous mix of warmth and natural sounds. Not natural sounds, not like natural recordings, but electronic sounds that breathe and are organic and sound alive. That's what I mean when I say natural sounds. It's a mix of that with the spiky, cyborg sounding, clicky, highly, I don't know, quantized is probably the best way to say it. Very accurate percussion that is underneath these organic, warm sounding hardware synthesizers. It's a mix of digital and analog, probably more specifically a mix of hardware and software synths. I think most of the percussion was done with software. And then the main lead synth sound that I say is the best of all electronic music, that was obviously done with hardware. I don't think you could have done that with software at the time of 1995. So this album served as kind of like a segue into their all digital or all software compositions that came after this in the second half of the 1990s. All right, so anyways, I'm going down a tangent. There's going to be a lot of tangents in this video, I'm afraid. This main sound from Clipper, I got to talk to you about it a little bit more. Every time I say Clipper, I think of Clifford, the Martin Short movie where he's an adult playing a kid. I don't know, another tangent. I got to stop it. Clipper, this sound from Clipper, it is just a glorious programmed synthesizer sound. It has these rises and falls, and it swells and it surges, and then it pulls itself back, and then it rests for a little bit before it surges again. And it does this all in just this organic, breathing sort of way. I always imagine this sound because of its peaks and its valleys and its straight flat areas and it bubbles and all that. It sounds to me like a mountain range. I hear it and I see a mountain range. So much so that I told you that book, XLZABK001, that I wrote last year. The longest story from that book is called Einhonder, and the mountain range in the scene, the setting of Einhonder, is called the Tri Repetae mountain range. The tallest peak of Tri Repetae's mountain range is called Clipper, named after the song we're going to listen to. As another side note to a side note, the castle that's carved into Clipper, that castle is called Autechre, named after the Aphex Twin song of the same era. So I try to weave this kind of stuff into the things I write, mainly to amuse myself more than anything. But I'm just trying to illustrate how impactful Autechre's music was from the 1990s. I didn't write any of this stuff until like 2021, but the images that were in my brain from the 1990s stayed with me for decades because of how good this music is. I don't know. So yes, this sound is organic, and it makes me think of natural things, but it's not a natural sound, meaning that there's nothing in nature that sounds anything like this lead synth sound. You can't go to your workshop and bang on a bunch of stuff and try to replicate this sound. You can't take a string and scrape something on it to get this sound. It just doesn't work that way. And that's always been my draw to electronic music ever since I was a child, is it is music made from supernatural sounds. And even though this sound has a earthy sort of feel to it, it is an alien sound. Even though it's got a natural resonance, a breathing to it, it is a supernatural sound. The ability to hold both of those things simultaneously is what makes this lead sound and pretty much all of Autechre's work on Tri Repetae so engaging. It is that combination of naturalness with robotics, is the best way I could say it. In fact, shoot, man, I'm wearing, I forgot what I even had on. This is my oldest t-shirt that I own. Of all the shirts that I still have, this is the oldest one. Instinct Records, I don't know if you could see that. Instinct Records is where I kind of got into electronic music. One of the ways, anyways. 1993, 1994, I think is when I got this shirt. So I got into Instinct Records, ambient, and electronic artists before I got into all of the Warp and the Reflex guys. Maybe just because Instinct is a label based in the United States and their music was easier to obtain. But this was kind of like my gateway to Autechre. I wouldn't have gotten into Autechre if I wasn't into, I don't know, Mysteries of Science or SETI. SETI is so good. Those SETI albums are so good. If I wasn't into those guys first, I probably never would have got into Autechre. Okay, I am absolutely waffling down memory lane in this video. That is not the purpose of this. You didn't click on this link to hear me talk about my t-shirt. How about if I just shut up, and how about if we just listen to Clipper? Let's do that. I'm gonna be quiet. Here comes Clipper. So we have a really great gradual build-up to Clipper. The sounds are slowly evolving and growing in the background, and new sounds are added. There's these really just cool digital percussion sounds that to me just sound like, I call them like cyborg sighs. It's like the sound of a cyborg sighing. Those start to be built up throughout the arrangement here. The first minute and a half of Clipper is just a very long, slow, gradual crescendo. And that crescendo leads into the main lead sound that I've been bragging about for like the whole 10 minutes of this video so far. So, but I want to take a moment to just kind of talk a little bit about repetition and the value of repetition in all music, but especially in electronic music. For music like this, repetition is essential to set your mind in the proper meditative state, to really absorb all of the sounds and the things that are happening. This kind of music is best with headphones for that reason as well, because you're just immersed in the arrangement of these sounds, these very foreign, alien, supernatural sounds. But repetition is important in all music, not even electronic music, in all music, because it reinforces the intention of the artist. Repetition is necessary to convey sincerity and trustworthiness in your audience. If music lacks repetition, dare I say, like Autechre's music from the 2000s, it lacked repetition. It was just a series of unrelated sounds. If it lacks repetition, it hurts your sincerity and your trustworthiness as a musician, as a composer, or as any sort of artist. So I think that's really important. I appreciate repetition in all music, but I especially appreciate it in electronic music for those reasons. I'm going to continue to play it, and then when it starts playing here again, you're going to hear the sound that I'm yapping about this whole time. Here it comes. I hope you can appreciate the effectiveness of that sound. It's something that you almost need to hear it with headphones, because there's such thoughtful tenderness in the arrangement there. There's a nuance in the way that sound evolves that you may not hear, especially listening to it through a YouTube video like this. I really encourage you to find this album and buy it and listen to the song. But it just has the subtleness. There's a subtle nuance to different parts of that melody where the sound does something different. Like I said, each note triggers that low pass resonant filter differently. And it just has a quirky little subtle bubbliness at certain parts where it sort of is sustained that just give it that human breathing, organic sort of feel. It's just really just remarkable. And it works so well with that circular melody I keep talking about. The melody just starts at one place and finishes essentially in the same place. I just love it to death. I absolutely just adore that sound. And it made me think of another benefit of repetition. So when you listen to music like this that's repetitive and it puts you in that meditative state, when you're in that zone, whatever you imagine, whatever your mind conjures, additional things are built upon that, just as different things are built on the foundation of the track you're listening to. So as the sounds are layered one on top of the other, and they slowly build to a crescendo in the song, the things you're imagining are arranged in that same way. There's layers of imagination on top of layers of imagination. And you can use this sort of meditative repetition in various ways. I mean, many people get into this state and they imagine things as a form of escapism from reality. And I can understand and appreciate that perfectly well. But you can also use this sort of repetition in your imagination to reinforce your own ideas. So what I prefer, as often as I'm capable to do so, I like to get into that state and listen to this music and imagine concepts and ideas, existential thoughts and feelings. And when you listen to repetitious music like this over and over again, and you have those thoughts in your brain, whether it's thoughts about yourself, introspective thoughts, or thoughts about your place in the universe, those sorts of thoughts get reinforced and strengthened as the music repeats. So I don't know. There's different ways to utilize this type of music for different people. There's different functions and different purposes of it. That's what I like to do as most often as I can. I'm not always capable to do that. So I told you, I'm going to be waffling a lot in this video. I got to stop talking. Let's listen to some more. We're going to come back to the song now, and we're going to get like a little bit of a reprieve from that melody. Things are going to kind of settle back down to where they were before the crescendo began. So let's keep playing Clipper. I need to pause it there. As you could tell, you're going to get a resurgence of that lead sound. But before we get to that, I just want to comment on, I like the use of the delay on those cyborg sighs. You know, Autechre is like sending it to like a mixing bus or something. The send of to the delay unit, very creatively and strategically, in a very like in a dub reggae sort of way, which I love. And it just makes those cyborg sighs just sound more passionate as a cyborg is capable of. It's like emulating passion with the way that those delays are applied to the cyborg sighs. You probably know what I'm talking about. I'm making that name up. I don't know what you call those sounds, but to me they sound like a cyborg sighing. And then we just have just a nice, in this like relaxed midsection of the song, they introduced this sort of quirky synth solo. Very unlike Autechre. They didn't really do like solo work, especially a solo that sounds very improvised like this. And it's just kind of like, it adds just a little bit of, oh, I don't know, mirth. It adds a bit of mirth because the main sound that drives the song is quite heavy. It just lightens things up a little bit. I don't know. I just like that aspect of it. So it's kind of cavalier. Maybe that's another way to say it. The solo that we hear is a little bit like a quirky cavalier bit before the main heavier lead sound returns. And it is going to return now. So let me go ahead and keep on playing it. Another thing that Autechre does so well in this era of their work is sequence a repetitive rhythm section, a beat more or less, but with no like forewarning, mix it up a little bit. Just change up the rhythm ever so slightly every like minute or so, where you notice it when it happens. You heard it just right before I paused it here. They just mix it up a little bit. And I think that's, it's not necessarily unique to Autechre, but it is just a different attention to detail that they applied to their sequences and their compositions back then that made them, I don't know. I like it quite a bit. I think it's, when they do it, it's more impressive to me than others because you're hearing in all of this, you're kind of, shoot, I don't want to be so negative, but damn it, like you hear a tendency in this music from Tri Repetae, especially the stuff that came after it, a tendency for them to just go full-blown random glitch nonsense, but withholding that, restraining that tendency, holding back from doing that. And I think those little bits of percussion fills, if you will, where the drum beat is changed up, not in a practical manner. It just happens almost out of the blue. I think that is them sort of testing the waters, like how much of this can we get away with? And apparently, well, not apparently, obviously, they did get away with a whole album's worth of that with Cornfield and onward. I am not supposed to be this down on, this is a praise video. I had the same problem with the Man-O-War one. Like, I love this era of Autechre quite a bit. So I'm just going to stick to that. Let's just stick to what I like, right? I can't, if you've watched it this long, there's probably something wrong with you if you've watched this video to this point. I'm judging you now, and I don't even know who you are. At any rate, Clipper, the song that we're supposed to be talking about, listening to, they're going to bring that mirthful, improvised synth solo back and layer that on top of the heavier main lead sound that we've been listening to. So from here on out to the end of the song, everything just comes together. Everything that was introduced, brought out, and pulled back throughout the entire length of the song, all that comes together at once. And this is just everything. It's the light, airy, quirky solo with the heavy synth mountain range sound all together at once. So I'm going to let it play on out from here. Let's finish up Clipper. All right, there you have it. Clipper, my favorite Autechre song from my favorite Autechre album. Electronic music from an era that inspired me and sparked my imagination in so many different ways. I appreciate you watching this video all the way to the end, and I hope that I see you in the next episode of Czar's Top Shelf.